We'll do it. Hey there, it's Lisa Vino with the Millionaire Author Mastermind. And I'm so excited because we have a guest that I have been wanting to talk to. I could talk to her forever. And she is here, Theodora Taylor. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so awesome. I always jump at the chance to talk with you in real life. And luckily we get to record it this time. So yay, this is going to be so exciting.
I'm so excited because I heard your talk at a conference and I told everyone that was the best talk I've ever heard.
Thank you.
And I would marry her. I think you're the only person I've ever said that about besides my husband. It was just, you were funny. And then you were talking about something I wanted to get back to, which was story, going deep into the story, not just what will sell, what will readers love, which is a great angle because, you know, we're writing books to publish them to make money. And that's cool. But story is what I fell in love with in the first place.
Right, right.
And it made me so excited. So I have bought all your books, and then I took your class, and I have on my calendar, like monthly, the login to go back and like take it again and take it again. And I don't ever like get through it, but I do some of it and it always helps. And your course is Bestseller Magic.
Yeah.
And for me, it just gets you deep into writing, story, what we love about reading, which is a great lens to look through first. And I'll just say, I also did a butter workshop with you, and that was another amazing experience.
Yes. Oh, yours was so great for the Butter Beginnings workshop. That was really fun. Salons.
But from now on, I'm writing my book and I'm going, I really need Theodora. Because I talked with my developmental editor, Becca Mysore, who's doing this overall view. And she's like, okay, this is a romance. So where's the emotion? Like, where are they? It's not just this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Like, why is it important to them? Like, what are they going on? What is their journey? And that is exactly what you told me in the workshop. You were saying, do a method actor pass where you're really in her head. And yes, she looks all put together. She's a great heroine and badass to the world, but inside she's a mess. And honestly, I can relate to that. So, and the reader will relate to that. So it's a good way to start. So I'll stop talking. Tell us about your books, and please tell us more about the workshops and how we can get involved in those, because those were awesome.
Oh, so the book is Universal Fantasy. The original book, the original talk was Universal Fantasy, which is a concept. I always say trope is what it is, and Universal Fantasy is why it tastes good. Like if trope is the meal that you are planning on serving, Universal Fantasy is in what I call butter, are the ingredients that make up that meal and make that meal taste good. And, kind of the stuff that you put on the menu. So if you're saying, I'm going to serve you a burger, which, if you're a restaurant and you're just like, okay, yeah, sure, we have a burger. You're not going to just say, hey, it's a burger. You're going to tell them why this burger is the best burger. You're like, I'm going to sell you America's best burger. It has a two juicy patties. It has crisp, beautiful lettuce. It has this. And that's what Universal Fantasy is, especially when it comes to trope and genre and just really selling your commercial fiction. And, I always say it's the reasons people will enjoy your book. And it's good for the writer to know that too. I often feel like, especially for me, even though I have an MFA in playwriting, when it comes to book writing, I feel, especially toward the beginning of your book, your career, you're just kind of fumbling around. You're kind of saying, oh, well, I'm gonna make a burger, and because I really like burgers, and here's a burger, and I think this is how you make the burger. And then someone eats it, and if you're lucky, they'll say, oh, this burger tastes good. I'd like another burger. But sometimes they're like, this burger tastes really good. This is the best burger I've ever had. And you cannot figure out for the life of you why that burger tasted good. And that's where Universal Fantasy comes in. It's kind of taking you from being a home chef to a chef, because as anyone who's watched a cooking show knows, chefs really know what their acids are, what their fats are. They know why a burger tastes good. They usually know what kind of ingredients are going to taste good together. But they know what's going into that burger. And that's what I hope Universal Fantasy does for writers. And we were talking earlier before the recording started about who we want to help and what phase they're in their career. And that's really one of the things I love about Universal Fantasy, because if you're a new writer, you can say, hey, this is a burger. These are the patties. This is why when you put these kinds of burger, this is how other people have made the burgers. This is why when you put these burgers patties together, it makes a wonderful Beauty and the Beast story. But then if you're what I was when I sat down to write this book, which is a grizzled writer, like at that point I had written like 30 books, and I figured out Universal Fantasy. It's a great way to, in my opinion, stave off burnout, which a lot of us go through, by kind of reinvigorating us, reminding us, oh, this is why I love burgers.
Yes.
This is why I love burgers.
Yeah.
This is why I actually prefer to make salads. This is why I like this kimchi burrito thing, which was kimchi Mexican fusion, was huge in California. I used to love it. And this is why I love it. This is why these two flavors work well together, even though I had forgotten kind of my purpose, or I was feeling like everything tastes the same or bland, and I couldn't figure out all the ingredients. So I hope that Universal Fantasy can meet any writer at any stage of their career. I'm going to stop now, because I do have a tendency to go on and on and on
No, me
about,
too. But I
about this
think
subject.
that is why I was so excited, is because I was in a period of burnout. I had baby number 2, and I just didn't have the self-care rituals, or wasn't prioritizing my own health, I guess, and needed to get back to what I love doing, which I was doing for the family, the sole breadwinner at that point, and doing well. But it's one thing to be like, I'm going to write some books and it's fun. And it's another to go, I better write these books and they
Yeah.
better sell, you know?
Yes. Hey, kitchen person, like anonymous kitchen person, being that terrible boss that I don't know if you've ever seen The Bear on Hulu.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah, that Joel McHale scene that like eviscerates us to our souls. Because I think one of the reasons that scene works really well, just in case there's anyone here who hasn't watched The Bear, the first season of The Bear, A, you should. B, there's this scene where he flashes, Carmi, the main character, flashes back to being in a restaurant,
Yeah.
a 5-star Michelin star restaurant, and the head of the restaurant is just laying into him. It's just like, you're worthless.
Yeah.
He's trying to craft this beautiful thing, and Joel McHale is just laying into him and telling him the worst things, like, you should kill yourself.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
level
bad.
of bullying. And what I think was so eviscerating about that scene, especially for creatives, is like, Joel McHale is ostensibly the boss, but we're often Joel McHale to ourselves.
I
So,
watched that scene where this poor guy's getting yelled at by his boss. And in my mind, it didn't really happen. That was just the main character's inner monologue.
thank you. Thank
Telling,
you.
if just watch the show, guys. I'm not going to explain it great, but man, I get what you're saying, in that we are the boss and we're the abusive boss sometimes.
Right, right. And I think he would maybe not, of course, we find out later that Carmi's dealing with a lot of family
Yeah.
trauma as well. But you know, the boss might have said to him, "Hey, look at these beautiful ingredients you're putting together. Oh, that keeps on happening. Well, like I think he keeps on, I forget what they call it, like cracking the stew or something like that.
Yeah.
Like that issue that keeps on happening. How can we fix that? How have other people fixed that? How have you fixed it in the past? You've made this dish before without doing that. What did you do before? Like that boss could have been a lot more encouraging, could have identified what he was doing right, and could have figured out how to expand upon it and things like that. So I love that you two were just like, yeah, that's his inner voice. That's how creatives often talk too.
That is how we talk to ourselves. I put so much pressure on myself, and I was obsessed with leveling up.
Mm.
And I came to realize that leveling up was going to mean pulling in more help, pulling in
Yes.
more of a team, pulling in more resources. So I meet with Becca Mysore from My Fairy Plot Mother for a developmental edit. I will pay you any amount of money, Theodora, to like beta read my just like the first
I
chapter.
don't do it because I like it too much.
Yeah,
I do salons, and you know, sadly their lottery system, because I can't
yeah, no, it's
don't
good.
have enough time to also write and salon people, but it's easily the most enjoyable. Like I love writing, and I love writing foremost, but it is so enjoyable that I was just like, if I let myself do more than these salons
Yeah.
every month, I would be a full-on editor and I would really, really enjoy it. But I should probably wait until all the story ideas were dried up until I take that step. I wish I could.
Yeah. So someone listening, you can get into the course and then apply. And I was lucky enough to be selected in the lottery. And I think there are slots like you can get in. So you can apply, and then Theodora herself and everybody in the salon will read and critique. And I went to school for creative writing. It's not necessarily something I recommend, but as someone who had been critiqued by her peers and felt like a cadaver on the table and medical students hacking away at her, this was nothing like that. This was a great experience. It gave me really actionable advice, and it's available in the salon, which is only available in Bestseller Magic. So I love the course. The book was awesome. It reminded me of Dr. Jennifer Lynn Barnes' talk on the id list, except I love that. And I listened to it over and over, and I'm obsessed with it. And then I needed more. And there you were with more. And I was like, thank you for your books. And even like the romance list book that came out. And then the course is so comprehensive, from ideation to the final page and the method pass and the deep edits that you want to do. And I have to admit, I haven't even gotten through the whole course because I keep going back to the beginning and going, well, I started a new book. I need to do.
That's how most people use the course. It's funny because if you take the course, there's, I think after lesson 16, I'm just like, you can literally stop now, but we're going to go into some deeper meta stuff which is like higher level. It's kind of hard to describe like the second bit of the course, but a lot of people have told me that what they do is every single time they write a book, they sit down with at least the first bit of the course, which is how do we develop our characters? How do we make sure that our characters, that I call it the audience character relationship score. And it's basically writing your characters so that they come off the way you intend them to come off to your audience, and controlling how your audience feels about your character. Because one of the things that's really hard about character is translating it for our audience. And I always say, well, there's nothing wrong with your audience disliking your character. It's only bad if you don't want the audience to dislike your character. If an audience dislikes your character, you should want them to dislike the character or feel a certain way about the character at this time. So I think the reason people retake just go through the course again every time they sit down to write a book is because it reminds them, hey, what do I want, how do I want my audience to feel about this character? Do I want them to be rooting for this character? Do I want them to feel sorry for this character? Do I want them to admire this character going in and kind of want the best for them at the end? How do I want my audience to feel about this character? And, how's the plot going to support that? Like, what are the moments that are going to happen in the plot that makes my audience go on this journey with the character and feel a certain way for this character, and often different ways for the character as we go on this journey with the character. So
I know it goes really deep, and that's why I keep restarting it and going, okay, well, one day I'll get to the second half of the course, but in the meantime, I'm getting a really good butter beginning.
Yeah.
And you have all these wonderful worksheets, and you have all these examples from Taylor Swift music videos to entire shows, which of course I stopped the course to go watch the shows. But as a creator and an artist, that's how I've learned.
Yes, same.
I don't recommend people get a degree in creative writing. If you want to get into a ton of debt and learn how to write literary fiction from people who have never written for a living, then do that. That's fine. I got mine. My professors were really surprised by the werewolf romance I wrote to graduate, but they loved it. So it worked out. At the same time, I didn't learn how to do my craft from a class. I learned by reading so much, to the point where I say, when you put as much as I've put into my head, it just is flowing out of me.
Yes, that's one of my dreams. If I could ever teach a commercial fiction course for younger people, because it's just like, I don't know, I don't think your kids are old enough yet, but my oldest is starting to get interested in writing. And I was like, oh, you know what? As someone who attempted to write her first book in high school, this is what I would have done. This is what I would have thought about going into a career for commercial fiction, as opposed to, like you said, kind of being taught by people who aren't making a living off of commercial fiction. And that's not to say that they don't have things to teach. Like, I'm very, very grateful for my MFA in playwriting. Although my teacher, it's a little different, because usually if you're doing an MFA in playwriting, you're being taught by a playwright who's at least gotten something off Broadway or been somewhat successful. He is successful in a real, I would say, in the real world with real consequences. Whereas sometimes with a few of the creative writing programs, and it's hard because I think we all know of really successful authors who cannot, for the life of them, bless their hearts, explain why they're successful or how they do what they do.
Yeah. And
so
that
a program that kind of combines both, where it's just like, well, I really value. And I think that's the difference. I think that's really what we're talking about. Programs that value you being able to make a living, who want to graduate you. And, when my sister went to school for chemical engineering, guess what? They want her to make a living. And this is crazy, but make a living in chemical engineering when she graduates. And so with my MFA, it was nice because to do it in dramatic writing as opposed to creative writing, because the program was absolutely intent on the actors, the the actors, it was a pretty practical program. Um, the actors, the playwrights, the directors in our program, they wanted us all to make a living doing what we were paying an insane, exorbitant amount of money to learn. So I wish that more for commercial. I've seen, like, I think Emerson College has one now. So more commercial fiction programs are popping up. But for creative writing, I would love to see more of an emphasis on, okay, let's not just write beautifully, but also write in a way that engages the audience.
Yeah. And I read a lot of craft books and get something out of every single one of them. But your material, it just gets to the beating heart so directly. And it's a fun ride because it's all about, why are we obsessed with Beauty and the Beast? Why am
Yes.
I obsessed with Persephone and Hades? Why, when I'm burnt out, am I returning to those stories again and again? Well, when I'm burnt out, I'm not doing anything, right? It feels like there's a blank slate. But it felt like there was a well and I was like sifting the wet sand at the bottom for a while.
Right.
And
Right.
and it was actually a physical issue. I needed to like take some vitamins and like get more sleep post childbirth. But when it came time to move towards being creative again, it was like, why did I do that? Why do I do this in the beginning? And it was stories that I fell in love with when I was 15.
Yeah. Yeah, like that primal fantasy, especially in romance, but also I would argue in science fiction. I just finished watching Fallout, and so much of that is based in primal fantasies that we have, like, for people who haven't seen Fallout, I'm gonna not spoil you, but the first episode is about, we meet three characters. One character is trying to find her father, who's been taken by these mysterious forces. So the kind of child helping their parents, doing anything that connect that primal bond of parent and child, where it's just like, I will go on a quest to save someone, like that saving quest. And then one of the other characters hopes to eventually become like this badass knight. So that kind of David Goggins, I'm going to become a Marine. I'm going to become the best in my field, like, going after that dream. And so it really, and these are dreams that like little boys have, that kids have, especially kids, because I think there's some instinct in us that, oh, our parents take such good care of us. We want to help our parents eventually. And so I really loved the series Fallout. And I loved how it tapped in to a lot of these primal fantasies, universal fantasies that audiences have. I think I answered the question.
Yeah. Was
But
there a question? I don't know. I just ramble and
me too.
then you say good things and it's really awesome. I'm really curious what your you just told us what you're watching. What are you reading and digging into? Because I will say this, one of the most enjoyable things about your writing and your courses and your talks is not only are you talking about the stories, but you're talking about them in such a way that you're encapsulating what they are on a meta level in a way that it's hard for me because I just get into it. I just get into the story and you're able to name it. Like
Yes.
Cinderella saves herself. And I was like, she does? Oh, she does,
Yeah. No, no. Right. Like, yeah, no, I really, really love that's I'm always just kind of like, oh, the hardest thing about being a writer is it doesn't give you as much time to read or watch things. It's like, oh, I guess I have to create this entertainment as well. So right now I just finished Fallout, which is why it's so like, oh, I could talk about Fallout forever. I really loved baby reindeer, and I love the conversation that is sparking.
I need to
And
watch it. Yeah.
you're like, no, say
I'm
nothing.
like, okay, I want to hear your thoughts, but
Say
like, let me plug my ears.
But it's a very good example of it's really, I don't know that he necessarily intends to do it, but I'm fairly sure he doesn't intend to do it. But it's a really good example of a us disliking people, but also feeling conflicted about them and stuff like that. Like the main character doesn't have any interest in being the virtuous, uncomplicated, unnuanced character throughout. And so at points you feel angry with him, and at points you feel sad for him, and it feels like that's intentional on his part. Like it's like, I want you to be angry at me right now. I want you to understand me a little bit right now, understand me a little bit more right now. So it's really a great masterclass in Melanie Harlow has this great speech that she gives. So if you ever have a chance to see it, please do, where she says, hey, you're not your character's therapist. So you've got to let them make bad decisions. You've got to let them do the wrong thing so that they can learn from their mistakes. You basically can't helicopter parent author them. And this was a really great case of him being like, I'm gonna show you this person making decisions you would not make. I'm gonna show this to you. I'm gonna show him making bad decisions, and it reminded me that I don't always want my characters to make the exact decision that they should. Like, have them make that bad decision and catch those consequences, and let the audience be upset with your character every so once in a while, because then if they're upset, they're going to like her even more when she learns from her mistake and corrects that, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I have a hard time just like making them truly miserable.
Yeah.
I'm rewriting scene 3 on 4 and 5 and 6. I'm splitting it apart, and I need to make the heroine like not happy. Like I wrote her at her job, and Becca, the editor, was like, like what are the stakes here? And I reread it. I was like, oh, she's having a great time. That's the problem. She needs to be miserable, and the audience needs to be with her because it's scene 3 in the book. She does have all these longings, and they're not fulfilled. And I don't know. I really enjoyed writing those scenes. I was like, yeah. And looking back, I'm going, oh, that's why would the audience keep going? Because there's no problems here. And I don't know if anyone else says this. I love someone to comment. I slow down as I get to a Black moment, the third act breakup, or whatever that readers say they hate, but I think it's very satisfying. So I still write them. And going into that, I stop writing for a few days to weeks. And some of it is like, I'm figuring out what my story is, but I think also it's like, I'm like bracing myself for that emotional like impact. And then I skip over it. I write the happy ending, and then I like join them. And I do this every book. It could be a 10,000 word short, and I'm still like 6,000 words in. Like, I just need to take a break. And why can't I write today? I'm just going to take a walk. And I do this every time.
I think that's actually a good thing. One of the things when I see someone say, okay, I write like really fast, and there's nothing wrong with writing fast. I love writing fast, but when they kind of consistently write fast and they are just kind of like, okay, I'm banging it out, banging it out, banging it out, I usually can predict that there's going to be not as much emotion on the page, because that's something writers struggle with. If you're caught up with these characters, this is kind of the hard thing about being a writer. So if you're like connecting emotionally with these characters and you're like doing a great job of conveying their emotions, showing them falling in love, showing that they're miserable at the beginning and stuff like that, that kind of takes a toll on you. And it's very hard to write fast when you're like connecting emotionally with this story. And so sometimes I not to be another Becca Syme, sometimes I have to say to myself, oh, when you need to take a moment after that dark moment, or when you're reluctant to go into that dark moment, or when you feel kind of S-wordy after this character, while this character is miserable while they're apart, that's because the emotion is actually there. And so if you need to take that moment, that's fine, but good job on putting that emotion down on the paper. But if I'm just like do, and just kind of there's one of two things happening. I tend to like skip over the dark moment or just make it as short as possible, like a wee
One page.
just the tiniest little dark moment. And often, I'll just kind of skip over it. My developmental editor is always just like, Theodora, you already know I'm going to have to say what I'm going to say. You need to.
I feel like it is, I see them, especially in romance, coming together, going apart, like repelling themselves, and they sort of come together, but they haven't let go of their wound or whatever's stopping them from being truly who they are. So their false selves are together, but it's not going to work. And then I see that third act breakup as this rubber band. Like they have to, there has to be a death, and that could be not necessarily physical, but emotional, that fired from your job, like a fall from grace, humiliation, shame, something is dying, but it's so the old self can slough off and the new can emerge, and then they can be truly together. That said, readers say they hate the third act breakup. I would love you to weigh in on what's going on. What do we do as writers? And what do you think that
but they're
is?
supposed to. It's kind of like saying I hate a cliffhanger. You're not supposed to like it. You're not supposed to be like, yay, I have to wait to find out what happens. Oh no. Like in my opinion, if I'm not getting 1 stars for a cliffhanger, like what happened? Like nobody should be fully approving that there is a cliffhanger in this book. There should be people screaming and thrashing and renting their clothes because they are so upset about this cliffhanger. I love when readers like get in the comments, get in the 1 star is like, this ends on a cliffhanger.
That means they're so hungry.
So upset.
They're so hungry. And then you look at your sales data and you're like, but you're buying and reading the next
yeah
book?
yeah so and that's what I mean about like you should intend that. Like, you shouldn't be like, oh, well, I didn't want them to get upset.
I love this. I want you to take your mic and like drop it. They're supposed to be.
I don't want them to not be hungry for more. I don't want them to be fully satisfied at the end of a 2-part book. Like you don't want that. So yeah, that's that's my feeling about cliffhangers, about dark moments. Like, yeah, of course they don't like that breakup. They shouldn't.
See, I wasn't sure if some of it was, we've all read a book where it wasn't quite done right. It kind of clunked in. And I was thinking, well, personal feedback, make sure it's earned, make sure it truly is. When they were together, they weren't their true selves. They were still their false self. They were still clinging to something that they needed to let go of. And if that's the arc all the way from the beginning, then it's going to make sense for them to go through the crucible, the moment of truth. And I love the dark night of the soul. Like the black moment's hard for me, but the dark night of the soul, where they're like the come to Jesus moment, because I want that transformation for myself. Where am I being fake, holding on to stuff that I need to let go of, which is going to happen at every stage. I'm not going to be the same mom to my baby as I am to my now 8-year-old. So there's going to be release and death and renewal. It's a part of renewal. And so I just felt like maybe some of the comments were, I hate this because it's not earned and it's clunked in there. Like, we have to break up. Someone has to miscommunicate. And I go, well, in real life, people do miscommunicate.
Well, yeah, so people say that all the time. And again, I feel with miscommunication, they're supposed to. This like is like, oh, but I think I do understand what you're saying. Like, if we're talking about the review, that's a 1-star review that was just like, oh, this could have been solved with a conversation. Like, that just kind of means that usually it's hard. As you know, there's what the feedback you get, and then there's what the feedback really means. And most people aren't great at feedback. Most people are just kind of like, you should get rid of the first chapter because it doesn't start because then it would be more interesting. And what they really mean is that the first chapter isn't active enough. I wasn't engaged with the first chapter. You don't need to get rid of the first chapter. You could just write a first chapter that's engaging before you got to this third chapter or whatever. And that's what they really mean, but they never say that. They never say that. As writers, we have to interpret what they're really saying. And so when people say this could have been solved with a conversation, like, there's a few things that they could mean by that. They could mean that there wasn't enough growth with the characters, like the characters weren't communicating, and then they're just kind of the same people, and they and then the author decided for them to communicate, and so now the misunderstanding is solved. But I think with misunderstandings, the best ones are when people can't communicate. There's something inside of them that is making this misunderstanding happen. When they solve that beautifully, and then they start communicating, they have the conversation that they couldn't have had as the characters they were, but as the characters they've become, they can now have this conversation and tell each other what they need to tell each other. Then you don't necessarily get those 1-star reviews that are just like these characters could have solved this with one conversation. So when I see feedback, and to be clear, I don't seek out feedback. I'm always just kind of like, my friend was telling me about this really great Kendrick Lamar interview, because she's obsessed with, if you're somehow not familiar with the Drake Kendrick Lamar beef, congratulations, you're keeping content very clean. But there's this huge beef, and she was telling me, and my writer friend Kenya Wright was telling me about this interview with Kendrick Lamar, where he was just like, oh, I spent a lot of time thinking about albums and how I want them to resonate with audiences. And I do the best that I can to create this kind of gift of an album to tell the audience what I want to convey to them. And I kind of consider it none of my business whether they received it. Like, I know this interview took place, and this was after the Damn album. And if you're a Kendrick fan, the Damn album is like an awesome, awesome album. And he was just like, so I'll know when I go out on the Coachella stage which songs resonated with them by where when they respond to the songs and things like that. So this was so interesting to me, because it was just kind of like, I do agree with that. You should do your best you should keep your audience in mind as you're writing it. You should have some intention. You should want the characters to come off the way they come off. And you should do your best to do that. But for me, I don't really love feedback because A, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah, after the fact, I'm like, I pay people to give me feedback and,
Yes.
you know, or, do a beta swap with a friend who knows romance, who reads romance. And even Neil Gaiman, though, said people can tell you when something doesn't work and none of them can tell you how to fix it.
Yeah.
And that I have that advice in the back of my mind. I do think that you're one of the few people who can tell me. You and Becca Mysore can edge me closer to like how to fix it. But I'm so happy right now. I'm in a season of what do I want? What do I really want? Not just some number, not just some accolade, not just some bestseller list. What really matters? And it's me getting up in the morning and getting my kids off to school and seeing their little faces, and then getting my cup of coffee and sitting down and getting into that story.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm there, and everything else is noise. I'm like, okay, but I'm choosing sometimes to clutter my day. And other times it's a conversation like this that renews me and reinvigorates me. And I'm so excited to jump into the course again. If you're listening and you are in the course and you're like, Lee, I will be your accountability partner and I'll do it with you. I asked a friend if she'd do it with me. She's like, I just got pregnant. And so I was like, okay, it's okay. You're busy.
Yes. Yes.
It's not her season of life. But if you're in that season of life and you're like, look, module 1, we're going to do this for our work in progress.
Yes.
Love that. Please reach out. I will have all the links in the show notes. And we talked about the Black moment during the 60-80% mark of this call. So now it's time to wrap up with a happily ever after. So take it away, Theodora.
That's so funny.
Makes me happy.
Yes.
I'm a romancing the beat girl. So I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, no, I love romancing the beat. It was, yeah. It's all, I actually don't have anything.
Okay. No, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I am going to end the call because we will talk for hours. We've done it before.
I know. It was fun. It was so hard when you were talking about your day, not to go into your, like, how valuable your teachings have been about really thinking about what you want and what will make you happy. And lately I've been, obviously your teachings are so amazing, and you and Renee know how much what you've said mean to me and changed my career and changed how I think about what I want, but following my energy, not just like saying, well, I'm not worth anything if I'm not selling books or I'm not doing this. But I loved what you said about, like, well, what do I want my day to look like? And one of the hardest things I think to do is to respect your energy, to say, okay, today I'm going to do this and I'm craving this. And so I'm going, even if this book is due, or I feel like I should do this every day, I'm going to hug my children. Hug my children. I'm going to have breakfast with my children. I'm going to pour myself a loving cup of coffee. I'm going to follow my energy. I'm going to occasionally schedule interviews so that I can be re-inspired. I'm going to seek out things like I'm going to seek out new learning and things like that. And it's really hard because I think we all do the thing where we're just like, this is my ideal day. But I think one of the weird things, especially as you get further along in your career, and this is, I'm sure, I can almost say for sure, certain, this has happened to you, Lee, where you write out your ideal day and you're like, wait a minute, that's just my day. Like that's,
Yeah.
I can live that. Like I live that all the time. And so it is kind of interesting to kind of just live your happiness and to live your ideal day and to be,
Embrace the butter in your real
yes.
life. You're describing butter, but it's real in my life.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting to like live your universal fantasy or your own writer fantasy and just live that every day and be okay with that.
That's our happy ending right there. But I do have one final thought because I'm doing a podcast with Russell Nolte. We
Yeah.
we recorded one yesterday and he said something that blew my mind. We were talking about what do you want? What do you really want? What do you want to create?
Mhm.
What are you going to do when you fail? Because we fail. We talked a lot about roadblocks and speed bumps and missed opportunities and failed opportunities. And it was interesting. But then he said, I had a thought that I will probably, I want to write for the next 40 years. And that means my future fans, a lot of them haven't even been born yet. Um,
Oh my goodness.
so I feel validated because I was on the floor and I'm still reeling. So I'll leave you with that thought. And thank you so much, Theodora.
I
And
love it. I love it.
here's to like years and years of storytelling and also living our happy endings.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this interview. It was so wonderful. Best part of my day. Thank you.
Thank you.